This is the podcast that we ask our guests from in front and behind the camera, how did they get their foot in the door? What was the key to unlocking their success? What's their story? Our guest today was a gymnast turned stuntman until an accident on set left him paralysed. Last year saw the release of the inspiring HBO documentary about his life. He's now turned author with his new book of the same name, The Boy Who Lived. We chat about his first experience on set with Matt Leblanc in Lost in Space, his fond memory of being Daniel Radcliffe's stunt double in the Harry Potter films, and the hardest part, not being able to see it through to the end. Our guest today is David Holmes. How did this all begin for you? Where did the love of, cinema, film, and obviously going into stunts and starting with gymnastics, how did that all begin for you? Where did that come from?
We were a family, that the TV was the best babysitter in the world, that and being a young gymnast. So I was a competitive gymnast growing up, and then Saturdays was kind of my only day off, Saturday nights. So we would be in front of the TV and it would be the usual gladiators and start off with Baywatch and all that stuff. And then once we'd had dinner, we as a family would always watch a film. Saturday nights would be a family film. Sunday nights would be Saturday nights would be a slightly more grown-up film, and then Sundays would be a family film. So at the end of my road was a newsagent that doubled up as a video shop. It weren't blockbusters, but it had enough, and we used to all go down there and take it in turns to pick the films that we wanted to watch. So some of the early films that left big impressions on me. I remember seeing my dad taking me and my older brother to the cinema to watch Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, watching his emotional reaction as the film plays out and the stunts take place. And I remember it leaving a lasting impression on me, saying I'd love to do that, and then going to the theatre with mum and dad and finding myself get emotional at Les Mis, and then seeing my mum get emotional. It kind of reminded my love for performance, it was there. So as a gymnast, I was always a performer. I was never the tiniest of gymnasts. My toes weren't pointed a lot, but I would perform. And so to then get the opportunity that I did at the age of 14 years old, which was to go in and be the child stunt double in the movie Lost in Space, I got to spend I was 13, and then I actually celebrated my 14th birthday at Shepperton Studios whilst riding robots, diving out of the way of pyrotechnics, sitting on spaceships as they shook and rode, the whole set shook, and hanging out with movie stars. Like Matt LeBlanc was in that movie. So at the time, Joey from Friends was the most famous character in the world. And it was amazing. And it was such a formative experience because people treated me as an equal, as an artist. And as a young kid, to be treated as an adult by adults was quite a game-changing thing. So it was from that moment on, I was in love with the machine. The film industry is amazing. You go through this airlock into fantasy world, them giant doors. They suck, don't they? When you open them, and they're massive. It takes two people to move them, and then you see the bare bones of a film set, like the back end of it, scaffolding and wood and plaster, and you name it. And then you go to the reveal when you actually enter the set, and it's lit for film. And it's my first film set I saw was the inside of a spaceship.
And, pretty amazing.
As a 13-year-old kid, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then the stunt coordinator, Greg Powell, was like, can you dive out the way of that explosion? And I was like, yeah, of course I can. And then I spent that summer riding robots, navigating alien planets, jumping around and practicing in the stunt stores and meeting people like Gary Oldman, William Hurt.
Oh, and Gary Oldman was in it, wasn't he, as well? Yeah.
Also, the crew members as well, that are legacy crew members in the UK film industry that I carried on working with throughout my career on the Potter franchise. And from that moment on, I was like, I'm going to be a stuntman. I went back to school and they were like, you've got to do this, this, and this. I was like, no, I'm going to be a stunt performer. And
How did that go? What did people's react? What were their reactions to that? Were they like,
the teachers were a bit like, you know, they thought it was a pipe dream.
mm,
It was quite disruptive at school because being small, I got bullied a bit. So I projected to protect myself. So I was always trying to make people laugh and perform, and was a bit of a classroom disruptor. But that's to stop getting stuffed into lockers. I'd rather people like me because I was funny
mm,
instead of, like, you know, see me as a target, which I
yeah.
sometimes. So went back to school, and then I got a phone call. My gymnastics club got a phone call to my gymnastics coach, Jeff Hewitt Davis, was a stunt coordinator. So Greg rung him for me for Lost in Space, and then he rung him again about 18 months later.
Mm.
And it was a single day shoot on a movie called Bedazzled with Elizabeth Hurley,
Oh yeah, yeah,
directed by Harold Ramis, who is Egon out of Ghostbusters.
yeah, yeah,
Sadly not with us anymore, but he was basically, we had to sit in a classroom, all of us gymnasts, and Fancy Liz Hurley, who was a substitute teacher, she was playing the devil. She drops a bald rubber, and then we all dive in to try and get the bald rubber and give it back to her. So I was the person at the bottom of the pile.
yeah.
And then that on that day shoot, Greg said to me, he was like, I've got potential. I've just come off of Lord of the Rings, the first one. I'm doing Band of Brothers, but I think I might be doing Harry Potter something, something. So I'd heard about the books, but never read them. He said, can I take your number? And then I might give you a call. So he took my mobile number. I had the Matrix Nokia phone, you know, the flip phone.
The flick.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
yeah. So I had that, went back to college, which I was in by then. And then I got a phone call to come in and do the first broomstick test,
Mm.
making me the world's first Quidditch player. So
What
I
did
was,
that entail? Was it
uh,
literally get up
it
on a
was
stick?
mental. No, right? So it was a flatbed truck, a big Dodge Ram pickup truck. And then
Right.
bolted to the chassis was a pole arm with weights at one end, and then at the other end was a broomstick with a bicycle saddle strapped to it. So a Nimbus was on the other end. And then the first test was in the special effects department, and the stunt boys just strapped me into a climbing harness,
Mm.
tied it down to the broomstick fixing, which was around the seat. And then it was an up and down. They slid a crash mat underneath me, and I was rolling my shoulders and pretending to fly. I'd read the Harry Potter books by now, so I was already in love with the character. I could already picture Quidditch, and flying was always a dream of mine anyway. So it wasn't that hard to perform it.
Was that a moment where you heard about the job and then you read the books, or had you already read them at that point?
Heard about the job, read the books,
Yeah, yeah.
fell in love with Harry. Like, who didn't? I mean, we can all find ourselves in all the characters in Hogwarts, and
Yeah.
Harry, you know, small, enigmatic, like kid that's brave, and kind of who I was. So then after that first broomstick test, we broke for lunch, and then we come back after the broomstick test, and then it was the truck had been driven out to the runway at Leavesden Studios.
Mhm.
And then Greg was like, right, okay, mount up. So I mounted up, got strapped in. And then they drove that truck down the runway at Leavesden. Someone from the wardrobe department gifted me a cloak and some glasses. And then I was on the back of the truck. We drove it at like 30 to 40 mile an hour down the road, which is about a quarter of a mile, half a mile long.
Mm.
Chris Columbus was sitting on the back of the flatbed. He had a camera lens and viewfinder looking at me, and was giving me shouting directions as we drove along. It was cold. The wind made my eyes water a little bit, but it was fine. The cloak tugged on my neck and started flapping in the wind, and then we got to the end of the test, and Chris Columbus was whooping and hollering and going, "That's how we're going to do it. That's how we're going to do Quidditch." And
Yeah.
then he come over to me, shook my hand, he went, "Thanks very much, David, you were really in it." And then he pointed to Greg, and then he pointed back to me. He went, "Greg, this is our guy."
Mm.
So that is how I got the
Wow.
lead stunt double for Harry Potter. So
Is it crazy to kind of look back at those moments. You can obviously remember it very clearly, all the little moments and intricacies of that. At that age and coming in and not knowing, loving the books, but not knowing what the films are going to become. Is it
Yeah.
crazy to think how massive the whole thing? Could you kind of preempt that at all at that
No,
point?
preempt it. Like all movies, can be hit and miss. I thought Lost in Space was going to be massive,
Mm.
and kind of it done all right, but it
I
wasn't.
loved it, mate. I went to see it in the cinema when I was a kid. I'm a
Yeah,
fan, so
yeah,
people
but it
did see
didn't
it.
break any box offices. So I'd already known that sometimes that they don't do as well as you'd hope or predict.
Mm.
Same as Bedazzled, but with the first Harry Potter, there was always the books in the background that
Yeah.
were getting that media attention. So whilst we were filming the first Harry Potter, the fourth book come out, and maybe the third or the fourth. I think the fourth, yeah.
Mm.
And we saw the news articles of kids camped outside bookshops for the night with their parents, and
Yeah.
like you just got this sense that if they make this movie right, that it could be something that's like bigger than what I'd been on before. And lo and behold, the first one become one of the most successful movies of all time. It came out when we just started the second one, and it was it's well, the thing is when we were at Leavesden, we were in a bubble, and what I mean by that is we were all a big family unit, and we had young kids, and we were trying to sort of shield them from that craziness that was the giant train, which was outside of Leavesden. And we were really successful to do that. Like, I used to be Dan's PE teacher, so he'd come to me and we would do training sessions in the stunt department. And I just let him be a kid. I knew because as a gymnast, I was a coach as well for younger generations. I knew that we just needed a space to play, to close the doors and do things that most kids would do. I'd get him of jumping off a port cabin, bouncing on trampolines, and we'd swing rubber swords about, do fight routines, judo rolls, all the things that an insurance company would have about.
Yeah.
But
Sounds like
creating,
a dream for a kid, though,
creating
for
that
Daniel. And
was an unbelievable outlet for him.
Mm.
And the same with Emma. She was into dance, so I've got a friend of mine who was a choreographer to come in and give her dance lessons. Rupert, not so into his keep fit. He had a table tennis table in his garden, in his dressing room, and liked his Xbox. But he was still, very capable and willing to do his own stunts. We had him on a fan descender when he falls into that the plant, the
Yeah,
devil's.
yeah, yeah.
So we dropped him from like 30 foot on a line that slows you down on the way down. He loved it, so he was always willing to perform stunts. It just wasn't into the let's put loads of work in on my physicality for it. But he still tried everything and still was willing.
It must have been a real playground. It's crazy that
Yeah,
it's
it was.
stuff I guess you wouldn't get away with necessarily now, but it sounds like it was so much fun.
But they were all sponges, and Daniel especially. Daniel would interact with all of the crew, try and learn and pick up everything. He could easily direct his own film, like without a shadow of a doubt, because of the way he understands the dynamic of the filmmaking process. And when you are part of a collaborative experience in telling stories, you get this sense of achievement that is shared across the whole crew. And, to then sort of pick up these things from people, camera angles, finding your lighting line, finding your mark, like eye lines, like line delivery, all of those things, like we were just learning. So I was a bit older than Dan, so I was getting myself into a bit of trouble, which is portrayed in the book. When you get to read it, you'll see some of the funny stories. Partying in Newcastle when we was on location and stuff like that. So, I was doing the things that teenage stunt double to Harry Potter should be doing. Getting myself into all sorts of trouble. But thankfully, they didn't sack me, despite a few close calls. And then I had, 7 or 8 years working on the greatest film franchise in British cinema, and I loved it. And it's the best job in the world as a stunt performer. And then halfway through my journey on the plot of films, I got qualified for the British Stunt Register, which is the only worldwide industry recognised stunt qualification. So you have to do 6 sports to a national competition level. Very hard.
Which were the sports that you chose to do?
Well, thankfully, I kind of had 3,
Yeah.
which was gymnastics, trampolining, and I was halfway there for high diving because of my aerial awareness. So gymnastics, trampolining, high diving. Then my other 3, which took me a couple of years to get, were kickboxing, horse riding, and swimming.
Wow, that's they're all completely different, really. That's mad.
Yeah, so a lot of training for it is risky. You can get hurt on the way. It's a hell of a financial commitment. It's only due to the fact that I was working on Potter that I could pay for it. But getting on the stunt register was the proudest moment of my career because of how hard it is and because it is something that I'd aspired to from my very first taste on Lost in Space. So, yeah, it was brilliant. I loved it.
That's amazing, man. And such it's funny, I wasn't gonna really mention this, but it's just a funny one. I worked on the 5th Harry Potter, so Order of the Phoenix,
Yeah.
in the camera department. So all the things when I watched the documentary when it came out and stuff, and seeing all those sets and all those things, it's such a familiar thing for me as well. And the things that you talk about, it all being a family, and it really is, man. It's that whole process, particularly those films. I felt like that everyone was so close, and because they worked on multiple movies as well, it's like a real family, and it's so great that you still get to see all these people, and it's such an unusual thing. You don't really get that anywhere else but the film industry.
And the film industry is definitely more sterile and more profit driven now. The way film sets run now is they're just not as fun. Used to have fun. What unit were you on? Main or
I was on main unit, and I was basically it was really funny because I was meant to be there for a week as like a T-boy in the camera department, and essentially the focus puller, Kim Sieber, he's a family friend, and he was like, "Do you want to come and do a week on Potter?" And I was like, "Do I want to? Yes, please, I do." I was at 18 at the time. And so I came on and I just made myself as useful as possible. And I ended up staying until the end of the shoot. So I was on there for a couple of months. And I think I came through maybe halfway through the shoot. And I remember the best.
Stores were like literally between C stage and D stage. Camera stores were closer to D stage where you had all your kit. Yeah, so I remember it vividly. I remember
your kind of the bit that you used to do your training with Dan and that room bit as well. And
you probably see my head bouncing.
Yeah, literally, yeah.
So that was our place to play. That was our place where we'd try new stunts and get different equipment to play with, and it was they were just great things to work on. And Leavesden, you remember it was the bare bones of what it is now. It was an industrial space full of dust and dirt, but that added to the charm. The first 2 films were, even more like gun ho. We used to, crash milk floats and play with cars on the runway and around, and then it kind of got more and more serious as the film, as the franchise went on. But we still had some of the best water fights in the world on that film. I remember me and the stunt boys were having a water fight with the special effects guys when we was out doing on the Tri-Wizard Cup when Harry is in the Dragon arena. We had a big water fight for that day. And the special effects guys had their fireman hoses. And at one point, they just stuck it in front of one of the cars and just opened it up in the center of the car, just drenching us. It was just,
oh my God.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah. I still speak to Ray, the focus puller on second unit. I still always see people that I know behind the scenes from films still working. Speak to Dutch, the grip, all the time. He just had a baby with a friend of mine. So
Oh
yeah,
wow.
it's and people come and play my charity cricket match every year. So
Amazing.
yeah, and
That's so lovely, man.
we've now lost people from the franchise.
Mm.
Like crew members, Jamie Christopher, Stephanie, who was in the art department. Robert Grayson passed away recently, and every time we lose someone like that, we're taken back to. We spent more time with these people than we did our own families.
Mm.
And they definitely leave a lasting impression. And I have a photo of lovely Jamie and Robert Grayson in my office upstairs. So I'm reminded of just the fact that they invested in me as a young man, as a young performer, and they were championing me in my career. And, there's a great saying by Mr. Rogers, always remember the people that loved you to being. Well, these men were those people. So I will never delete their number in my phone. I will always look at their photos fondly and treasure the memories I made with them.
Mm. Well, as you say, it's crazy. It's a decade. It's a decade of your life with
Yeah.
these people that as you say, you get so close to. And yeah, I mean, for me, it was a very small part of my life because I was only there for a couple of months, but it still is a huge memory for me. So I can't imagine for you, like 10 years is that's a crazy amount of time.
Yeah, hardest thing for me was never getting to see Harry to the end.
Mm.
I really wanted to go back to work. I really wanted to see the character out and finish the last two films off. Fortunately, my accident stopped that very abruptly. And then I was faced with my own Voldemort to deal with, which was rebuilding my life after breaking my neck. And that's detailed in my documentary, as you can see. And then in my book, that's very much, I go into much more detail. I talk about some of the darker sides of my journey and how hard it really is to live with a spinal cord injury.
Mm.
And I hope people read it and realize that I'm not there to dump on Harry Potter and what it means to a generation of people. I love the films. I love what they do for people and the sense of comfort they bring. But to share some of my own set stories and then to share my stories on rebuilding my life, it kind of mirrors Harry's journey in a different way.
Now for a quick break. We'll be back to the episode shortly. Check out the Patreon at patreon.com/life in film. And don't forget to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy this episode, please leave us a positive rating. Add us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at Life in Film Pod. Essentially, please like and subscribe everything. It makes a huge difference. Thank you. This podcast is sponsored by Betterhelp. Do you work in the film industry? Are you freelance? Or perhaps you have a 9 to 5? No matter what you do, mental health affects us all. I struggled early on in my career with the uncertainty of if and when I would ever work again, struggling to pay my bills or simply with anxiety. Don't know about you, but being an actor, it's very important for me to maintain structure in the downtimes, and I found not only exercise, but talking to someone, for me, was a game changer. And so Life in Film has partnered with Betterhelp to provide you with access to the largest online therapy service in the world. And it can all be done from the comfort of your own home, from a phone, tablet or laptop. No commute, cutting down travel costs, and most importantly, it's affordable. With over 1,000 therapists in the UK, Betterhelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise in mental health. If you need someone to talk to and you're thinking of giving therapy a go, Betterhelp is a great option. And being a listener of the podcast, you get 10% off. That's 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. That's betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support us, get early access and exclusive content and episodes, click to join our YouTube channel and become a member now. And back to the show. The documentary, I watched it when it came out, and I didn't know all the details. I just remember hearing the news of the accident and remembering you and thinking, just such a shocking thing. But watching the documentary, really, it's such a beautifully made documentary and so well put together, and all the people that you've got involved with that. How did that get, was it you that kind of brought that to life?
Yeah, sort of. So in the documentary, we talk about my 2019 surgeries. And I was facing a bunch of surgeries that could have easily killed me, and it nearly did. And I didn't want to leave this planet without people fully understanding my contribution and what stunts do and risk in the film industry. So what I did is I made a 14-minute YouTube video describing my stunts in Harry Potter, and then, reflecting on that moment of my accident, and then how I've lived post-accident, to sort of give a sense of hope, but also, to cement myself as part of the history of that franchise. That 14-minute YouTube video then got me a meeting with one of the big cheeses at Warner's. The meeting didn't go how I thought, but I had my friend Dan Hartley, who's a capable director. He directed his own feature films. I had him in the meeting, and he said, "Look, there's a story to be told here. And I know what you're facing in your near future is pretty scary, but if I can come and interview you before your surgeries, then at least we've got something that we can solidify and put on." Then I survived the surgeries. COVID happened, and during the lead up and around the COVID years, we were talking to various different production houses, the BBC, ITV, this, that, and the other, and pitching the idea of the documentary. Daniel kindly got involved and said, "Yeah, I want to tell your story, Dave." And because I'd done my podcast series with Dan in them, he always tried to turn the camera onto my story. Very reluctant. I was always like, I want to highlight the stunt industry, not me. And then between Dan Hartley, Dan Radcliffe, myself, and Amy Stairs, we formed a collaborative under my production company, Ripple Productions. We then found another co-production house, which is Lightbox, who are famous for Man on a Wire and Searching for Sugar Man. I mean, Oscar winners. And with Simon Chin and his team behind us, we then got the pitch out there, and HBO wanted to do it because, for obvious reasons, Warner Brothers were a bit nervous about the narrative, which fully understand, and they needed to know that we're not here to besmirch Potter in any way. And that's one of my most important things, what it means to people. There are kids in conflict zones watching my stunts on Harry Potter on a mobile phone. Is making them feel safe. So to sort of dump on that's never been part of. That's one of the reasons why I didn't go to court back in, the time of my accident. So we got together with HBO. We then got access, because of their connection to Warner Brothers, to the Warner Brothers warehouse, where we had that amazing day out where we got to break the Batmobile and see our old costumes, and me and Dan just walking down the corridors and reliving our memories and working together. We also got the access to all the behind the scenes footage, which is seen in the documentary. By the way, I haven't watched the documentary.
Oh, have you not?
No.
I can understand why, because you're going to have to go through it all over again, and I'm sure
Yeah,
you want to do.
I've just gone through it enough with my book to know that that was the right decision.
Yeah, fair enough.
I've just had to relive my best and worst days in writing, and it's hard. Yeah. So there is a day I'll get into bed that I won't get out of again. With my journey with my spinal cord injury and the fact that it's changing, there might be a day where I need a machine to breathe and won't be able to talk and all that lot. So to be able to revisit my life at a stage where I still had hope, optimism, drive, and I've got a HBO documentary to fall back on when it's tough. Not many people have that luxury. So I'll sit and I'll wait on it for a bit. I'm currently recording the audiobook for my book, which is
amazing
work. But writing the book's been cathartic. It's been hard. It's been really challenging emotionally. So to know that we're not watching the documentary, it just reconfirms that just not yet. I've got a job to do. In society, we all should be protecting the people most vulnerable. I would be considered a vulnerable person, but I do not consider myself a vulnerable person. I consider myself to have a gift of an opportunity to represent a community that the victim narrative of disability is always played out in the media. I'm a victor, not a victim. I'm a survivor, not someone that's been had their life changed and it ruined my life. You know what I mean? It just made me a better human being. It spiked up my levels of empathy and understanding and reflection, and to be present, because I know that nothing's given for free. This morning, just before this podcast, I was watching a green woodpecker outside. Just watching it. Like nature gave me that gift this morning, and I pay attention to it. Like my memories are formed in a 16:9 frame, like a film lens, because that's how I grew up. Some people who read, their memories are narrated by their own voice or subtitled when they're revisiting their dreams. Mine is, how is the light looking? What is it like? I mean, today is a grey day. I mean, the colour tone is like a polished, bloody, like silver metal surface outside. But the nature gave me the gift of that bird, and I sat and I watched it, and I made sure that I was present and appreciated it. And that's the gift and the curse that what I live with.
Were you just talking about there about the light and the fact that you see everything in a film frame? Do you have any? I can imagine you directing. I can imagine you back on set. Is that something that you would ever consider doing?
Love to. I spend my life directing with my PA team, with how my body needs moving and working, and how I need to just get out of bed. It's a 2-hour operation. So I spend my life directing. I also spend my life championing people and trying to get the best out of them. So yeah, I'd love to direct, and it's been done before, but really I'd like to produce. I've still got aspirations on telling stories, and there's some great stories I'd like to tell. Right now I'm doing a bit of research on the Halifax explosion, which happened in 1917. It was the largest man-made explosion of its time in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Quite a few people, I mean, over 2,000 people were killed instantly from it. It caused a tsunami, wiped out a Native American tribe. I mean, there are amazing threads of heroism throughout the story. In my research, I'm finding exceptional characters. I would love to tell that story in a Chernobyl type HBO miniseries, and I like to reuse the cast of Potter to tell it. It'd be great. You've already got the fan base. It's already got an amazing, like the story itself is, and there's, Chernobyl's laid the foundation on how you can tell that story. So, I'm finding unbelievable characters in the thread. It's pretty cool. So I'd like to tell that story. I'd like Dan to direct. I'd like Tom to be the hero. I'd like Alfie Enoch to be the black doctor that was refused to work in the hospital, but then went on to be the main trauma surgeon for the area, who developed new techniques for plastic surgery that's still used to this day.
Wow.
I'd like Ivana Lynch to be the woman that I speak to from Film Nova Scotia. Her great-grandmother was 5 foot, but pregnant at the time. And she found herself crawling through spaces of collapsed building, helping the rescue, all while pregnant. So the whole area has just got this thread of history about it. The story's massive, and the format is there with the fan base. I just need HBO to commit 130 million.
Yeah, that's well, I mean, why not though? I mean, you've already obviously you did the documentary with them, so you've gotten in there. But that sounds, I'm in.
It's cool, right? It's a great story to tell, and I just So I'm always doing that. I'm always looking through Wikipedia, finding these threads, and just dreaming big. Like right now, I'm writing a children's book.
Oh, cool.
Simply because my book is very adult. It opens with me breaking my neck read as a script. I do not want young minds reading it, but I'm also aware that young minds might be drawn to it because of my association with Harry Potter. So I'm writing a children's book about a kid gymnast and trampolinist that gets the gift of aerial awareness after a magical summer with a bumblebee on a swing in his garden. And then he goes to loses the bumblebee, goes to trampolining school, does a trampolining session at school, realizes that he can somersault and he knows where he is in the air. Goes to trampolining class, like an actual club, becomes the best trampolinist in the area, and then goes to the gymnastics club because they run out of things to teach him, becomes the best gymnast. And then one day in the gymnastics club, a random man comes in and measures him up and takes some photos of him and then speaks to his mum after gym. And then he's in the car on the way home. And he says, "Mum, who's that man?" And she says, "Oh, that was a stuntman. I want to talk to you and your father about it." And then he gets the opportunity to go in and work on a film, Doubling of What a Wizard. And so it's my life and my story, but just with a bit of magic involved, and then to try and inspire a generation to see the industry as a viable opportunity to tell stories and get involved. So not just stunts, but the whole industry.
Yeah,
Each different book,
fun.
each different book would be a different film genre. So if it's a horror film, he works in a haunted house. If it's a space film, it's astronaut school, and film scenes in the Vomit Comet where you have zero weightlessness, where they build film sets inside airplanes. So I'm trying to deliver 120,000 words, strip it down to 75,000, and then I've written a book as big as the first Harry Potter.
Wow,
Really big. Yeah, I can't hold a pen. I can't, type that well with my limited hand function, but I dictate, and these stories are in me. So, it's in me with my book, and that'll be out, in 9 days' time. Feel a little bit exposed with it, not going to lie. I go into some pretty honest and raw emotions and, hold myself accountable for the mistakes that I made. Turned into a life of drinking drugs post-injury and all of those things. So, of course, there's going to be lawyers that pick it up, and not lawyers, publishers, like clickbait wankers, you know what I mean, that are going to be able to grab a title and then stick it out there and write a salacious story and hopefully sell newspapers. But I want people to read the whole book in its entirety, to just get a grasp of who I was, who I am, and who I want to be as a man. And being accountable, that's what makes us men.
Matt, it's so inspiring, and I'm really looking forward to reading the book. It sounds like it's going to be a hard read, but obviously it's going to be like the documentary. I feel like the thing I took away from it, it was just still joyful and hopeful, and that's such a nice thing that you've managed to do there, because your perseverance and your optimism is something that is infectious from the documentary. So I presume it's going to be like that in the book as well.
Michael J. Fox says it perfectly.
Yeah.
With gratitude, optimism is sustainable. You can find something every day to be grateful for. You can carry on. I'm very grateful to be able to breathe independently, speak independently, to talk to you today, to have a moment with a green woodpecker in my garden, to just be present and be here. So, gratitude is the best thing to practice. It ain't easy. The world is noisy and it's messy, and we can focus on all the negatives and be scared and live behind the barrier of fear that the world's media would like us to live by. But I say push back on that. You're only living when you're like on that edge of like uncomfortable. Life begins outside your comfort zone. I'm uncomfortable from the moment I wake up with a broken neck. My only rest from this is sleep and death. But I still get up every single day. And I'm glad that I do, because I never miss moments like that. Woodpecker.
Yeah, good for you, man. Good for you. Just because you mentioned it there, have you seen the Michael J. Fox documentary Still?
Yeah, Still. It's beautiful.
It's amazing.
Beautiful film, yeah. Absolutely
He's an inspiration as well, man. He's incredible.
I'm waiting to watch the Superman one about Christopher Reeve. It's going to be hard. It's going to be very close to home for me. But I am really looking forward to seeing that story told out of a real life superhero, just like Michael J. Fox.
Mm. Can I ask, just to change tack a little bit, do you have advice for, young gymnasts? I mean, like obviously writing a children's book, people in that position where they might be thinking about going into stunts, any sort of advice for, young.
If it's your dream, go for it. Like, it's the best job in the world. You get to travel, you get to go in, work with different cultures in different environments. You get to find what you're made of and get tested. And if you can handle pressure and you can put yourself under pressure and get through, it's the job of dreams. So not just the stunt industry, anybody who's got aspirations to be creative. The best of who we are as human beings is creating art. Whether that is collaborative on a movie set or sitting there and doodling, like, it's the only thing that's pure in life that doesn't take from this planet, it gives. So, to be creative in any way, shape, or form, lean into it. It's the best therapy you can do. Most embarrassing moments, yeah. I mean, my day doesn't involve a single embarrassing moment not occurring. Like, the list goes on. Don't have bladder and bowel function, so I've shat myself on top of a mountain in Switzerland. Like on an alpine train going up there. I've had, involuntary erections around my parents where they're helping me in hospital. I've had, stupid situations where I met Margot Robbie on the set of Barbie recently, and I was like, just please don't get a boner. Please don't get a boner. I mean? The wrong day to wear a two-piece cashmere tracksuit, that's for sure. So, yeah, like, that is life. And if you can laugh at yourself, it helps soften the blow.
Yeah.
And the other thing about having a laugh is you rarely do it alone. You know what I mean? So to be able to find the humor in the horror is one of my greatest tricks on how to navigate the difficult journey that I've gone on. So, and I continue to go on. So, yeah, the embarrassing moments galore. If you read my book, you'll see that there was plenty on Harry Potter as well. So, I look forward to hearing what you think of it when you finished it.
Urge anyone that hasn't seen the documentary to watch that, and obviously, I mean, the book, if it's anything like the documentary, I'm really looking forward to that too, man. And thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it, and I know we've been going back and forth for a while, and I just really appreciate your time, man. So thank you so much.
Cool. Question for you: you still creating? You still, working in the industry in any way, telling stories, not just through the podcast platform, but
no,
still taking photos in some way?
Yeah, not so much. The camera side of things dropped off a little bit, which I still love it. And it was kind of a crossroads. When I did Harry Potter, as I said before, I was 18, and it was kind of like, this is an amazing job. And one of the guys, Frankie Ferrari, he great name. He was one of the camera assistants. He went on to do The Dark Knight after Potter, and I had a choice. I had basically a choice to go and do The Dark Knight, which in hindsight now I'm like, that would have been amazing. Or to go into acting. That was what I always wanted to do. So I ended up doing the acting route, and I've been doing it ever since. And I'm 37 now, so I've been doing it nearly 20 years, which is crazy. And so yeah, I'm still doing that, and the podcast kind of came about while we were all sitting around in the pandemic, not being able to do anything. So it just blossomed, and now I get to chat to people like you, interesting stories from all over the world and different jobs in the industry. So it's been great, man, and it keeps me sane in between the acting work. So it's yeah.
Well, I wish you all the luck in the world with it, and keep pushing, keep working on yourself, working on your craft. Never give up on your dream, because all we have is our dreams and aspirations, and if not, the mess of the world will take those away. Yeah.
Man, thanks, man. I mean, that's how you finish a podcast.
Yeah.
Inspirational, man. And all the best. And again, thank you very much, man.
Thanks to you and to you and everyone you love and everyone who listens to podcasts. The thing I like to say the most is I hope life is kind to you, because ultimately it isn't. Being a human being is a lesson of loss. And, we have to always understand that is the gift and the curse of just being alive. So, I hope life is kind to you, mate.
Thanks, man. Thanks so much, and have a great day.
You too. Cheers, Elliot. Thanks, mate.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to support us, get early access and exclusive content and episodes, click to join our YouTube channel and become a member now. Thank you to our guest David, and thank you as always to our sponsor, Betterhelp. David's book, The Boy Who Lived, is available to buy now.